Hi, church family. I'm excited to introduce you to one of this year's Serve the World partners, the Timothy Initiative, or TTI for short. I first heard about TTI in 2019 when I traveled to Africa to visit several of our Chapel Street Ministry partners. I had the privilege of traveling with Dr. David Nelms, TTI's founder, and I saw firsthand some of their work in Tanzania. I remember hearing about thousands of new believers and hundreds of new churches, and honestly, I struggled to grasp the scope of TTI's impact. Since then, I've had the opportunity to travel with David and others from TTI to both Nepal and Togo. Each time I've witnessed the fruit of their vision, new believers and new churches spreading across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. I think the best way to describe the Timothy Initiative is that it's a viral church planting ministry focused on making disciples who make disciples and planting churches that plant churches. Their vision is rooted in 2 Timothy chapter 2, where the Apostle Paul tells young Timothy, "And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others." Here's how it works. A church planter, someone that TTI calls a Paul, goes through a 2-year discipleship process. And during that time, the Paul plants a new church and also identifies up to 20 men and women called Timothys, who are then trained to become church planters themselves. Each of these Timothys then over time becomes a Paul, and the process repeats itself, creating a never-ending viral movement of disciple making and church planting. And this is happening on a massive scale, hundreds and thousands of times over all around the world. And here's an amazing thing. On average, TTI can plant a new church for just about $400. That means our Advent Serve the World offering goal will help start over 600 new churches across East Africa. In late January, just a few weeks from now, Pastor Jeff and I will join a global gathering of TTI national leaders in Nairobi, Kenya. We'll also visit dozens of new churches in Tanzania and Ethiopia. Churches planted by people just like Musa, whose story we would like to share with you now.
Tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born.
His knees should ache, but they don't. He should be retiring, but he's not. His name is Musa. He's 62, and his body and spirit stand strong, for he carries a message that burns brighter than any mountain fire. There is only one long road in and out of the mountains he calls home, the Vidunda Mountains of Tanzania. Each Saturday, Musa begins his journey, 4 hours down the steep slopes of Vidunda, down to where his weekly TTI training awaits. It's a long way down, but an even longer way back. 5 hours of climbing to return home. 9 hours round trip. 9 hours with a spring in his step to be trained to go and tell. In 2022, Musa heard about the Timothy Initiative from a friend and became a Timothy himself, a disciple maker on a mission to plant churches. Through his disciple making training, Musa found the courage to proclaim the gospel. And so he began to walk. He walked to villages all over the sparsely populated mountains, sharing the good news with all who would listen. The Vidunda people turned away from him, clinging to their ancient beliefs, continuing to make sacrifices to spirits and their ancestors. Yet Musa pressed on, for he knew the gospel message was the antidote to their brokenness. One day, in a village far from Musa's home, people started to respond to the gospel. One by one, villagers started to respond to Christ through Musa. Every time Musa made the 8-hour trip, it was worth it to him because more people surrendered their lives to Jesus. Soon, Musa had made 8 new disciples, and today, his efforts have resulted in a thriving church in the village, bringing light to a place that had been held captive by the darkness of ancestral worship for so long.